Hey there, vinyl community. So, haven't done a video in a while, and mainly just because I haven't had the time. A lot of work stuff going on, a lot of things happening. You know how it is. So I can't promise that I'm going to be doing more, but see what we can do. I have been doing some posting on Instagram. I find that to be faster and stuff like that. And I try to add some writing in there to make it a little more interesting than just showing pictures. So, but yeah, I was thinking a little bit. I've been listening to this weekend. I've been listening to a lot of jazz, and I don't think I've focused on the topic of jazz music. I think for a number of reasons. It's kind of like one of these. I know what I like. And I don't have a deep-rooted understanding of jazz, other than the, basic kind of a thing. I know what I don't like, and I know what I like. And I tend to, as I thought about it more and more, I do have kind of an area in jazz that I guess have a preference for, which is probably leaning more towards the spiritual, mixed with some free jazz aspects of things, and probably away from, I know there's a lot of jazz reissues going on right now, and that's great. For people who like that, those are, from what it looks like, are affordable. I wish I was more into that, because probably a good, inexpensive way right now to pick up on a lot of those. You hear about them, the tone poet stuff, and all I've ever heard is that somebody say positive things about them. I've looked at them myself, and they're well done, reissues. So that's great. Listening to in the background right now, you guys probably know this record, Headhunter, it's Herbie Hancock. So it's probably pretty indicative of kind of my preferences to mixing like jazz with funk and soul, and kind of a spiritual end of it, and then I do like some more free things that some people describe as challenging. It's funny, because what one person finds as challenging, I find it harder to sit and listen to a piece of music that I find dull, boring or whatever, that it just doesn't excite me, that the melodies are a little too straightforward, and it just doesn't do it for me. But stuff like this is a whole nother story. And so anyway, I thought I would show a few records that kind of give you some orientation, some ideas to where I'm coming from. There's a couple new releases. I got got this not too long ago, and this is great. This is jazz, kind of borderlining on what might commonly be called new age, which is really a misnomer, because there's a lot more here than that. I got this actually. Dom played this on his, showed this on his channel a long time, months ago, and I made a note of it and had been looking for a nice copy. And he noted that just the cover alone is worth the price. It really is. But it's a beautiful record, and jazz flute, kind of, and very spiritual vibe to it, and really dig it. Great record. And kind of what got me orientated in that way was my first jazz that I ever really liked. I remember reading in rock magazines about Sun Ra. And so really my first orientation of the first jazz I got curious about was Sun Ra, which, if you know anything about his career, it's kind of like all over the place. And this was actually the first jazz record. I think this is the first jazz record I ever picked up. And kind of a, VG copy of this. Not great, but the vinyl looks really nice and it plays really well. And this is a pretty accessible Sun Ra. You know, it's not too out there, and I really dug this. And this kind of took me on that voyage. And then I did have this like brief flirtation with you know, it seemed like everyone I knew was into like bop and hard bop, and that was the direction to kind of go in. And those albums that everybody, Sidewinder, and you know, all those records that everybody gets into, and I did too. But I found myself very quickly unsatisfied with it, and they weren't the revelations that I was hearing in other places, and so I ended up shying away from a lot of those. At one time, I actually owned a bunch of those the Music Matters reissues that they did, and then during COVID, when those prices started going up, I couldn't help myself. So show you a couple other things, and then I think the next, I think probably this was very early, you know, jazz record for me. I love this record, and it's not my favorite jazz record. It's kind of like that. It's right at that crossroads for me when the avant-garde and the bop started to transfer over. It's not my favorite Coltrane record. Actually, Ascension is probably my favorite Coltrane record. But I still love Supreme. Great record, and I can't say enough good about it. And I know it's everyone you know, knows this record, so it's not like a new thing to show, but it's certainly part of the history that I got into. And then from there, I just started like investigating, like, you know, believe it or not, at one time these Alice Coltrane records were fairly easy to get, you know, like before COVID and that. And yeah, this is probably my favorite Alice Coltrane. And from here, you know, you get into Alice Coltrane, and then who do you have to get into next? You got to get into, you know, Pharaoh Sanders. And I was lucky enough, I think I found, this probably considered his masterpiece, I guess, you know. Deeply spiritual, beautiful music. I remember listening to this for the first time, and if you know anything about this record, it centers around this chant of the creator has a master plan, and which can mean a lot of things. And I don't think I take that in the way maybe traditional religion would take it, as in there's a ghost man in the sky and he's making our decisions. I didn't hear it that way at all. But I thought more in the terms of that there's a natural flow to the universe, and there are times to struggle against it, and there are times to ride it. And the creator has a master plan. Beautiful track, and if you don't know this record, you should, but I'm sure most people probably do. It's a great record, and very untraditional jazz, although not so out there that you'll have a hard time, you know, checking it out. There's a Sun Ra offshoot that does a cover of, I can't think of the name of that record now, I shouldn't mention it, but there's a cover of that too, and it's really good. And anyway, and then from there, you know, I kept getting into Pharaoh Sanders. This is like another, you know, highly recommended record. Great record. And in some ways, this is Pharaoh going a little further out, a little out there now, a little challenging. Drone, free jazz, still spiritual. But great record. Yeah, I can't say enough about it. Black Unity Part 1 and Black Unity Part 2. beautiful record, and one that I think, this is the kind of record, sometimes when I'm listening to this, I had it on over the weekend, and it's one of those times I almost wish I had the CD so I could just let it play all the way through, because I didn't like that break forcing to bring me back to reality. Anyway, cool record. And more recent, this is really good. This is Pharaoh at probably his most. There are, instead of one song or two songs on the record, there are 6 songs, and they, I think they each give you a little snapshot of Pharaoh in his different capacities. So like the spiritual aspect, the free aspect, the more drone and Eastern aspects. Yeah, great record, man. Cool. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking to get into spiritual jazz, I think that Pharaoh Sanders is probably a pretty good, because there's a lot of he ties a lot of those things together. Alice Coltrane and Coltrane, and it ties all of those pieces together nicely. In fact, on this record, I have Lonnie Smith is on here, and he actually wrote the Astral Traveling, the first track on here, and does it on one of his records. So there's a lot of nice connections there that can help bring you to a bunch of different beautiful spiritual music. It's also challenging, so it's music for the heart and for the head, and that's, I think, what I like so much about it. Anyway, going on a little bit long, I'll mention just a couple other records. This was, talking about spiritual jazz, this was like a more recent discovery. This is Tom Skinner. This is that record. A lot of people were talking about this last year, but I heard this on Stunty played this on his live stream, and I think he said something like he thought it was, if not album of the year, one of the best jazz records of the year, and I concur. Great sleeve, and it describes it as organic avant-garde, free dub, chamber jazz. It's a cool record, and pretty easy to find, I would think, so you won't be challenged. If you want something, there's a couple more. I'm more on the funky side of things, but keeping with the flute, this is an album I think not so many people are. I don't know if people are still into this, but this is a really great contemporary, funky, urban jazz flute record. Lot to love here, and don't overlook this if you see this for a reasonable price. This is a cool record, and I just can't get enough of flute and jazz. And it's funny, jazz flutes come full circle, man. It's like, now it's people used to talk about jazz flute in certain derogatory terms, and now everyone's into it now, which is cool. Another record that I heard on Stunty's show is this one here, Don Cherry and Dollar Brand. This is a beautiful record that mixes a lot of those Eastern elements with avant-garde jazz and spiritual. Sorry for all that glare on there, but yeah, while we're searching out, if you're looking for another little offshoot in that arena, that you'll definitely dig. And then finally, I would just mention one. This is a reissue. There are a couple reissues of this, but this to me does a really nice job in mixing spiritual jazz, of that religious connection, mixed with elements of a free jazz, and of course it's not really free. A lot of this is written out, but yeah, I think this record really goes to some places, mixing really in some cases really hard elements of avant-garde and free jazz together with real light and beautiful moments of spiritual. And it's kind of a expensive reissue, or at least it used to be. Maybe it's, but they're out there, and originals, yeah. But the reissues are pretty reasonable. So check that out if you're inclined. Anyway, I don't want to go on too long. Just talk a little bit about jazz music, and since I spent the weekend listening to it, just show a little bit about my connection to jazz, and for me there's no contradictions. In many ways I like avant-garde music, and I like jazz and spiritual and free jazz, and I also like garage rock, and in my mind I see the connection there. Others may struggle to find that connection like I do, but for me, music is all about the passion and the spirit, and so I find the connections between folk blues music from the 1920s together with spiritual jazz music, and to me they're coming from a similar place, and that's all the way to a bunch of teenagers sitting in their garage and jamming and becoming the Sonics, and to me all of those have the certain connection to one another. Anyway, thanks for listening, and hope everyone has a good weekend or the rest of it, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.